Thank you for choosing American Pest CEUs. Hi, I'm Sean Reeves with American Pest CEUs. I've been in the pest management industry since 1999. I'm an associate certified entomologist, and I'll be your instructor for today's course. Today's course was compiled by Jack Launius, who has served in the pest management industry since 1990. This course is not a substitute for on-the-job training or other requirements of your state agency. Always refer to the label. Always follow federal, state, and local regulations. This course does not replace any required training by the manufacturer of their fumigant gas product. This course is for continuing education requirements only. This course is provided with permission of Douglas Products. This course is not a Douglas Products or Vicane sponsored or approved course. Please read and follow label directions. American Pest CEUs thanks Douglas Products for allowing the use of this publication. Specimen label: restricted use pesticide due to inhalation toxicity. For sale to and use only by certified applicators or persons under their direct supervision, and only for those uses covered by the certified applicator certification. So because of the high toxicity of this type of product, you're going to need to be a certified applicator and or certified operator. So keep in mind, this is not the type of service or product that a homeowner is ever going to be able to do. And we're going to talk more about fumigations as we go, but many of you know when you're dealing with a fumigation, there's a lot of issues that can arise. This can actually be life-threatening. So you have to be very careful anytime you're dealing with fumigations and understand the major responsibility that you have. Trademark of Douglas Products and Packaging Company, Douglas. For the control of existing infestations of listed insects and related pests such as drywood termites, Formosan termites, powder post beetles, death watch beetles, old house borers, bedbugs, cockroaches, clothes moths, rodents, rats, mice, and the larvae and adults of carpet beetles, except egg stage, oriental, American, and brown-banded roaches. For use in dwellings, including mobile homes, buildings, construction materials, furnishing, household effects, shipping containers, and vehicles including automobiles, buses, surface ships, passenger rail cars, and recreational vehicles, but not including aircraft. When fumigating, observe local, state, and federal rules and regulations, including such things as use of chloropicrin, clearing devices, positive pressure, self-contained breathing apparatus, security requirements, and placement of warning signs. Application personnel must participate in Douglas Products sulfurofluoride training and stewardship plan. Active ingredients: sulfurofluoride, 99.8%, other ingredients, 0.2%, EPA registration number 1015-78. Just a couple quick notes on this slide. I want to mention that the majority of fumigations that I've seen through my years has been for drywood termites. Now that's probably because I live in Southwest Florida. I also used to work in several other states, lived in Michigan, Tennessee, and I can tell you that the other thing I've seen fumigations done for more often than not was bed bugs. I think it's good for everyone to see the label here and understand there are other insects that you can use this product on. It has a pretty broad label. I can tell you one time we did a fumigation on a house in St. Petersburg, Florida, where we were going after drywood termites. We didn't realize they had a major rodent problem. We saw some droppings, but they really didn't mention that. We ended up finding 63 dead rats just laying around in different areas of the house after the fumigation. So it's a reality that this fumigant's going to kill pretty much anything inside there, including rodents, rats, mice, even bigger animals like that. So as we'll talk about, safety is going to be of the utmost importance when dealing with this product. This is a keep out of reach of children product with a signal word of danger, poison. Precautionary statement: hazard to humans and domestic animals. Extremely hazardous, liquid, and vapor under pressure. Fatal if inhaled. May be fatal if swallowed. Liquid may cause freeze burns of exposed skin. Do not get in eyes, on skin, or on clothing. Vicane specialty gas fumigant is odorless. Exposure to toxic levels may occur without warning or detection by the user. We'll sum this slide up by saying this is probably the most toxic product you would use in your career as a pest control technician. So just keep all these things in mind. First aid. In all cases of overexposure, such as nausea, difficulty in breathing, abdominal pain, slowing of movements and speech, numbness in extremities, Get medical attention immediately. Take person to a doctor or emergency treatment facility. If inhaled, get exposed person to fresh air, keep warm, and at rest. Make sure person can breathe freely. If breathing is stopped, give artificial respiration. Do not put anything in the mouth of an unconscious person. Call a poison control center or doctor for further treatment advice. If liquid is on skin or clothing, immediately apply water to contaminated area of clothing before removing. Once area is thawed, remove contaminated clothing, shoes, and other items covering skin. Wash contaminated skin area thoroughly or shower. Call a poison control center or doctor for further treatment advice. First aid. If liquid is in eyes, hold eye open and rinse slowly and gently with water 15 to 20 minutes. Remove contact lenses if present after first 5 minutes, then continue rinsing eye. Call a poison control center or doctor for treatment advice. Note to physician. Vicane is a gas which has no warning properties such as odor or eye irritation. However, chloropicrin is used as a warning agent and is a known lacrimeter. Early symptoms of exposure to Vicane are respiratory irritation and central nervous system depression. Excitation may follow. Slowed movement, reduced awareness, and slower garbled speech may be noted. Prolonged exposure can produce lung irritation, pulmonary edema, nausea, and abdominal pain. Repeated exposure to high concentrations can result in significant lung and kidney damage. Single exposures at high concentrations have resulted in death. Treat symptomatically. Liquid Vicane in the eye may cause damage due to refrigeration or freezing. Refer to elsewhere on this label for additional precautionary information and directions for use. Notice, read entire label. Use only according to label directions. Before using this product, read warranty disclaimer, inherent risk of use, and limitation of remedies elsewhere on this label. If terms are unacceptable, return at once unopened. In case of emergency, endangering health or the environment involving this product, call 1-844-845-3129 or 1-352-323-3500. Agricultural chemical. Do not ship or store with food, feeds, drugs, or clothing. Directions for use. It is a violation of federal law to use this product in a manner inconsistent with its labeling. Read all directions for use carefully before applying. Storage and handling. Store in dry, cool, well-ventilated area under lock and key. Post as a pesticide storage area. If the storage area is in an occupied building, the storage area must have either 1. A forced air ventilation system that meets required local ordinances for the storage of hazardous materials and operates continuously, or 2. Be equipped with a permanently mounted and properly maintained and functioning sulfuric fluoride monitoring device designed to alert occupants of the building if sulfuric fluoride in the air of the storage area is greater than 1 ppm. Store cylinders upright, secured to a rack or wall to prevent tipping. Do not contaminate water, food, or feed by storage. Storage and handling. Cylinders must not be subjected to rough handling or mechanical shock, such as dropping, bumping, dragging, or sliding beyond that which would normally occur when moving cylinders. Do not transport any cylinders in closed vehicles where they occupy the same common airspace as personnel. Transport securely only in an upright position. Do not remove valve, protection bonnet, and safety cap until immediately before use. Replace safety cap and valve protection bonnet when cylinder is not in use. Storage and handling. When cylinder is empty, close valve, screw safety cap onto valve outlet, and replace protection bonnet before returning to a supplier. Only the registrant is authorized to refill cylinders. Do not use cylinder for any other purpose. Follow registrant's instructions for return of empty or partially empty cylinders. Leak procedures. Evacuate immediately area of leak. Use a NIOSH or MSHA approved positive pressure, self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA not SCUBA, or combination air supplied SCBA respirator, such as manufactured by Ranger, Surviva Air, Scott, or MSA, for entry into affected areas to correct problem. Move leaking or damaged cylinder outdoors or to an isolated location, observing strict safety precautions. Work, upwind if possible, Do not permit entry into leakage area by continued. Unprotected persons until concentration of fumigant in the breathing zone, areas within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down, is determined to be 1 part per million ppm or less, as determined by a detection device with sufficient sensitivity, such as an InterScan, Mirin, SAFL-RE, or Spectros Explorer gas analyzers. For more detailed information on the source and use of air monitoring devices or respirators, consult the Vicane Gas Fumigant Structural Fumigation Manual. Cylinder and product disposal. Promptly return all empty cylinders to your distributor of Vicane. Follow proper cylinder handling directions above. Storing and handling continued. Pesticide weights are acutely hazardous. Improper disposal of excess pesticide is a violation of federal law. If these wastes cannot be disposed of by use according to label instructions, consult your state pesticide or environmental control agency or hazardous waste representative at the nearest EPA regional office for guidance. Information. The Structural Fumigation Manual is part of the labeling for Vicane. Before using, read and follow all label precautions and directions. Prior to the parties entering into a fumigation agreement, the fact sheet for Vicane must be provided to an adult occupant of the structure to be fumigated. Vicane is a highly hazardous material and must be used only by individuals knowledgeable of the hazards of this chemical and trained in the use of required respiratory equipment, fumigant detection devices, emergency procedures, and in the proper use of this fumigant. When used for fumigation of enclosed spaces such as houses and other structures, warehouses, vaults, chambers, trucks, vans, boxcars, ships, and other transport vehicles, 2 persons trained in use of this product, at least one being an applicator who is licensed, certified by the state, must be present during introduction of fumigant, re-entry prior to aeration, and during the initiation of the initial aeration procedure when exposure exceeds 1 ppm. 2 persons need not be present if monitoring is conducted remotely outside of the area being fumigated and no one enters the fumigated structure. If fumigating for insect pests, do not apply when temperature at the site of pest activity is below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature may be measured at the slab foundation, subfloor soil, or wherever the coolest part of the structure may be. This restriction does not apply when fumigating for rodents. When fumigating a single unit room within or connected to a larger structure, such as townhouses, apartments, condominiums, all units of the entire structure must be vacated during the fumigation and aeration periods. Remove food, feed, drugs, and medicinals from the structure before fumigation if they cannot be adequately sealed to prevent exposure to Vicane. Chloropicrin must be used as described on this label to warn of an ongoing fumigation. Preparation for fumigation. Structural fumigation. Remove from the structure to be fumigated all persons, domestic animals, pets, and desirable growing plants. See the Structure Fumigation Manual for instructions regarding the handling of fish tanks. For mattresses, excluding waterbeds and pillows completely enveloped, in waterproof coverings, do one of the following. 1. Open the seal of the waterproof covering, or 2. Remove the mattress or pillow from the space to be fumigated if the waterproof covering cannot be opened. Mattresses and pillows with waterproof coverings containing built-in vents designed to permit air passage are considered to have an open seal to the waterproof covering and can remain as is. In the fumigated space, food, feed, drugs, including tobacco products and medicinals, including those items in refrigerators and freezers, can remain in the structure if they are in plastic, glass, or metal bottles, cans, or jars with the original manufacturer's airtight seal intact. Food, feed, drugs, including tobacco products and medicinals, including those items in refrigerators and freezers, not in plastic, glass, or metal bottles, cans, or jars with the original manufacturer's airtight seal intact, needs to be removed from the fumigation site or double-bagged in Nilofume bags, which are available from distributors of Vicane. Note, extinguish all flames, including pilot lights of water, heaters, gas, refrigerators, ranges, ovens, broilers, dryers, gas fireplaces, etc. Turn off or unplug all electrical heating elements, such as those in heaters, pianos, organs, etc. Shut off automatic switch controls for appliances. and lighting systems, which will be included in the space to be fumigated. Open operable internal doors, internal openings to attic and sub areas, storage chests, cabinets, drawers, closets, and appliances, such as washers, dishwashers, dryers, microwave or conventional ovens, etc. Using electric fans will help provide for forced distribution and aeration of basements and other dead air spaces to facilitate rapid dispersion of gas. Refrigerator and freezer doors may be left open if the units are turned off or disconnected and all food items have been removed. If the applicator chooses to leave sealed food items in closed refrigerators and freezers during the fumigation, the appliances must be open when clearing the structure until the concentration of Vicane in them is 1 ppm or less. Multi-unit structures. When fumigating a single unit room within a larger structure, such as townhouses, apartments, condominiums, all units of the entire structure must be prepared as a fumigated structure, and all applicable rules, regulations, and label instructions apply, such as occupant notification, structure preparation, posting, securing, and aeration. An adult occupant of each currently occupied unit must be provided with a fact sheet for Vicane. Ensure that all exterior entranceways and exterior doors providing access to the individual units are secured with secondary locks. C. Securing structure entrances so that only state licensed applicator in charge can gain access. Chloropicrin need only be used in the fumigated space where Vicane is introduced. During Step 3 of Aeration Procedure 1 or 2, check all units within the fumigated structure for concentrations of Vicane with an approved clearance device. If the concentration of Vicane is greater than 1 part per million in the breathing zone, i.e. areas within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down in a unit, ventilate the unit with operable doors and windows open, and continue to measure the concentration of Vicane until it is 1 ppm or less. Structure may be reoccupied when concentrations in the breathing zones in all units is 1 ppm or less. Connected structures. A connected structure is defined as any structure connected with the structure to be fumigated by construction elements, e.g. pipes, conduits, ducts, etc., which may allow passage of fumigant between the structures. If state rules and regulations do not describe or permit a process to isolate and seal connected structure to prevent passage of fumigant from the fumigated structure, then the connected structure must be vacated during the fumigation. When it is necessary to vacate any connected structure, that structure shall be considered as a fumigated structure, and all applicable rules, regulations, and label instructions apply, such as occupant notification, structure preparation, posting, securing, and aeration. Chloropicrin need only be used in structures where Vicane is introduced. Concentration. Levels of Vicane must be measured in the breathing zones, areas within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down, see aeration and re-entry, in any connected space or structure to confirm concentrations are 1 ppm or less before structure can be reoccupied. Tarpaulin fumigation. Open operable windows as permitted by local and state regulations. When tarping, use a highly resistant material, such as a vinyl-coated nylon or polyethylene sheeting of at least 4 mm thickness. Seal all seams. Seal the bottom edges of the cover of the ground using materials such as soil, sand, or weighted snakes. To minimize escape of gas through the soil and to avoid injury to nearby plants, wet soil outward from the foundation to the cover, if not sufficiently moist, to act as a barrier for the gas. Taped fumigation. For fumigation sites that can be sealed with plastic, paper, or tape, seal adequately around doors, windows, vents, and other openings. Chamber fumigation. For chamber fumigation, use a tightly sealed chamber with adequate circulation. Construction materials, furnishings, household effects, vehicles, and shipping containers. Follow preparations as appropriate in above paragraphs for chamber, taped, or tarpaulin fumigation to assure good confinement of the gas for the recommended period of exposure. Fumigation of surface ships in port. Surface ships in size up to and including large ocean-going ships may be fumigated with Vicane to control the various pests listed. The professional fumigator and the ship's captain or owner shall follow All applicable regulations and those listed in the Coast Guard DOT Title 46 Shipping Section Parts 147A.1 through 147A.43. Except for those persons involved in fumigation, no people, plants, or pets may be on board during fumigation. The person responsible for the fumigation must notify the master of the vessel or his representative of the requirements relating to personal protection equipment and detection equipment. Emergency procedures, cargo ventilation, periodic monitoring and inspections, and first aid measures must be discussed with and understood by the master of the vessel or his representative. If leakage of the fumigant is detected, the person in charge of the fumigation shall take action to correct the leakage, or shall inform the master of the vessel or his representative of the leakage so that the corrective action can be taken. Food, feed, drugs, and medicinals shall not be exposed to the fumigant. If not removed from the vessel, they shall be protected from exposure. The vessel must not be moved during the fumigation and aeration periods. If re-entry is necessary before aeration is completed, positive pressure, self-contained respiratory protection must be worn. Warning agent. Chloropicrin is a warning agent introduced into the structure during fumigation. In order to avoid direct exposure to the fumigant being released, chloropicrin must be released within the structure at least 5 to 10 minutes prior to introduction of the fumigant. Place a handful of wicking agent, e.g. cotton, in a chloropicrin evaporation container. Do not use chloropicrin evaporation containers or application equipment made of magnesium, aluminum, or other alloys, as chloropicrin may be severely corrosive to such metals. To enhance the distribution of chloropicrin throughout the structure, place the chloropicrin evaporation container in the airstream of a fan. Pour chloropicrin over the wicking agent. Warning agent. When adding chloropicrin to evaporation containers, dispense no more than 3 fluid ounce per container. Use 1 fluid ounce per 10,000 to 15,000 cubic feet, 30 milliliters, for every 283 to 425 cubic meters of space to be fumigated, or follow dosage rate calculated by electronic fumiguide system. Establish at least 1 chloropicrin introduction site for each 45,000 cubic feet of space to be fumigated. When applying chloropicrin at multiple chloropicrin introduction points within a structure, start at the point farthest from the exit and work toward the exit. Removal of all chloropicrin evaporation containers from the fumigated space during the initial phase of aeration after tarp removal will aid in the dissipation of the warning agent from the structure. Chloropicrin need not be used when fumigating passenger rail cars. However, a thorough walkthrough inspection must be performed of each rail car, with doors being immediately locked upon leaving each car, and a guard must be posted during fumigation introduction, exposure period, and aeration. Chloropicrin is a warning agent which causes smarting of the eyes, tears, and discomfort, and has a very disagreeable pungent odor at very low concentrations. Chloropicrin must be used by persons certified to apply Vicane or under their supervision. Applicators must observe the chloropicrin precautionary statements and personal protective equipment appearing on this label. See the Warning Agent section of the Structural Fumigation Manual. Protective clothing. Wear splash-resistant goggles, goggles designed and made of material that allows no measurable movement of the liquid pesticide being used to pass through them during use, or full face shield for eye protection during introduction of the fumigant. Do not wear gloves or rubber boots. Do not reuse clothing or shoes that have become contaminated with liquid Vicane until aerated and cleaned. Respiratory protection. If the concentration of Vicane in the breathing zone, areas within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down, of the fumigated area, as measured by a detector device with sufficient sensitivity such as Interscan, Mirin, Safal-RE, or Spectros, Explorer-R, gas analyzers, does not exceed 1 ppm, 4 milligrams per cubic meter, no respiratory protection is required. When this concentration is exceeded, all persons in the exposed area must wear a NIOSH, or MSHA approved, positive pressure self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, not SCUBA, or combined air-supplied SCBA respirators such as manufactured by Ranger, Surviva Air, Scott, or MSA. Before using any make or brand of SCBA, learn how to use it correctly. Determine that it has an adequate air supply for the job at hand, that it fits properly, providing an adequate seal around the face, and that it is in good working order. For more detailed information on the source and use of air monitoring devices and respirators, consult the Vicane Gas Fumigant Structural Fumigation Manual. Pre-fumigation check for potential leaks. Securing structure entrances. To secure the structure against unauthorized entry during the fumigation exposure period, and Step 2 of aeration procedure 1 or 2, use a locking device or barricade on all exterior doors or doorways. A locking device, such as a secondary lock or barricade, must be demonstratively effective in preventing an exterior door or doorway from being opened from the exterior using normal opening or entering processes by anyone other than the certified applicator in charge of the fumigation or persons in his or her on-site direct supervision. Consult state and local regulations for any supplementary instructions and restrictions on securing against entry. Securing passenger rail cars. Follow either Procedure 1 or Procedure 2 for securing rail cars. Procedure 1. A. Walk through the inspection must be performed of each rail car with doors being immediately locked upon leaving each car. Post a guard during fumigation introduction, exposure period, and aeration. Because a guard is posted, application of the warning agent is not required for passenger rail cars. Procedure 2. A thorough walk-through inspection must be performed of each rail car with doors being immediately locked upon leaving each car. If no guard is posted, then apply a warning agent following instructions per label directions. To secure the passenger rail car against unauthorized entry during the fumigation exposure period, use a locking device or barricade on all exterior doors or doorways. A locking device or barricade must be demonstratively effective in preventing an exterior door or doorway from being opened using normal opening or entering processes by anyone other than the state licensed applicator in charge of the fumigation or persons in his or her on-site direct supervision. Consult state and local regulations for any supplementary instructions and local restrictions on securing against entry. Dosage and exposure time. For fumigation to control drywood termites and non-egg stages of other insect and related structural and household pests, the Fumiguide calculators is to be used for the coordination of fumigation rates with soil or slab temperature, exposure period, and fumigant loss rate measured in half-loss time HLT. When the control of the egg stage is desired or when fumigating for Formosan termites, use the indicated multiple factor of the drywood termite dosage as determined by the Fumiguide calculators for pests listed in the following table. On this chart, you can see the pest and a dosage factor as a multiple of drywood termite dosage. For rodents, you're going to be 1/2 times. For carpet beetles, German cockroaches, and other cockroach species, 1 time. For bed bugs, 1.9 times. Furniture carpet beetles, 3 times. Old house borers and Formosan termites, 4 times. Clothes moths, 6 times. Powder post beetles and death watch beetles, 10 times. These dosages apply to dwellings, construction materials, furnishings, and vehicles. Do not use less than the specified dosage factors when treating for rodents, cockroaches, bedbugs, and termites. 1. To determine proper dose for rodent control, use 80 degrees Fahrenheit as the calculating temperature. Unlike insects, rodents are warm-blooded and do not require increased dosages at lower temperatures. 2. More than one fumigation may be needed to control the infestation after egg hatch. For fumigation to control rodents, use sufficient gas to accumulate at least 36 ounce-hours following equilibrium. Regardless of ambient air temperature, refer to the Vicane Gas Fumigant Structural Fumigation Manual. The Fumiguide B calculator is to be used for unmonitored structures to coordinate fumigation rates with temperatures, a 20 to 24 hour exposure period, and an estimated HLT. The Fumiguide Y calculator is used in conjunction with Fumiguide B when fumigant concentrations are monitored and/or there are measured variations in exposure time. The Fumigate calculator is a handheld microprocessor which performs the functions of both the Fumigate B and Y calculators and includes relative humidity as a calculating factor. Software versions of the Fumigate calculator may be available. Contact Douglas Products and Packaging Company or your distributor of Vicane for information on where to obtain the Fumigate and reference literature. Introducing the Fumigant. Release the Fumigant from outside the structure, tarp, or vehicle. The release point should be into a large open space in the fumigation site. Release the Fumigant through a suitable leak-proof tube with a minimum burst pressure of 500 pounds per square inch psi. Direct the Fumigant into the blast of air from a fan having a capacity of at least 1,000 cubic feet per minute CFM for each pound of Vicane released per minute. Damage to household materials can occur if insufficient fan capacity is used for the rate of Vicane released. It is recommended that protective sheathing such as polyethylene plastic under the shooting stand, shooting hose, and shooting fan be used to further protect floors during application. To prevent damage, do not apply Fumigant directly to any surface. Posting of fumigated areas. The applicator must post all entrances to the fumigated areas with signs bearing in English and Spanish. 1. The signal word, danger, peligro, and the skull and crossbone symbol. The statement area under fumigation, do not enter, no entre. 3. The date of fumigation. 4. Name of fumigant used. 5. Name, address, and telephone number of the applicator. Only a certified applicator may authorize removal of placards, and only when the concentration of Vicane within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down is 1 ppm or less. Aeration and reentry. No one is allowed in treated areas if the level of Vicane is above 1 ppm unless provided with a NIOSH or MSHA approved positive pressure self-contained breathing apparatus SCBA, not SCUBA, or combination air supplied SCBA respirator such as manufactured by Ranger, Surviva Air, Scott, or MSA. Note, during the initial 1-hour aeration procedure, approved respiratory protection must be worn until the concentration of Vicane is confirmed not to exceed 1 ppm with an approved detection device. Since the Interscan, Murin, Cephalari, and Spectros Explorer gas analyzers give immediate readings, respiratory protection is not required when clearing these instruments after having completed the initial 1-hour aeration procedure. If a reading indicates levels in excess of 1 ppm, leave the affected area immediately. Only an approved detection device of sufficient sensitivity, such as the Interscan, Murin, Cephalari, or Spectros Explorer gas analyzer, can be used to confirm a concentration of Vicane of 1 ppm or less. The Interscan must be calibrated according to the manufacturer recommendations within 1 month prior to use as a clearance device. All other approved detection devices must be calibrated according to manufacturer recommendations. The concentration of Vicane must be monitored in breathing zones, areas within the structure where individuals typically stand, sit, or lie down. Structure must remain posted for fumigation until cleared for re-entry. Open all operable attic doors and accesses and direct a fan into the attic. If the structure has an attached garage, the door between the garage and structure should be open. If the structure has a central air handling system, the fan or blower should be activated for each unit if operational. As an alternative, a fan may be placed in front of a furnace inlet to blow air into the central heating and cooling ducts. Select the appropriate procedure based on the fumigation rate. All structures fumigated at 16 ounce MCF or less may be aerated using procedures 1 or 2. All structures fumigated at concentrations greater than 16 ounce MCF must be aerated using procedure 2. Aeration procedure 1. These steps must be completed in sequence. Step 1. Aerate structure with all operable windows and doors open, aided by the use of 1 or more fans, for a minimum of 1 hour. Total fan capacity using 1 or more fans shall be capable of displacing a total of 5,000 CFM. Step 2. Secure structure and do not allow re-entry for a minimum of 6 hours from the start of aeration, first opening of the seal. During this time, structures must remain posted. Step 3. After the minimum 6-hour waiting period, measure the concentration of Vicane in breathing zones of each room. If the concentration of Vicane is greater than 1 ppm, ventilate structure with operable doors and windows open and confirm concentrations are 1 ppm or less before the structure is reoccupied. Aeration Procedure 2. These steps must be completed in sequence. Step 1. Aerate structure with all operable windows and doors open, aided by the use of one or more fans, for a minimum of 1 hour. Total fan capacity using one or more fans shall be capable of displacing a total of 5,000 CFM. Step 2. Secure the structure and do not allow re-entry for a minimum of 8 hours from the start of aeration, first opening of the seal. During this time, the structure must remain posted. Step 3. After the minimum 8-hour waiting period, measure the concentrations of Vicane in breathing zones of each room. If the concentration of Vicane is greater than 1 ppm, ventilate structure with operable doors and windows open and confirm concentrations are 1 ppm or less before structure is reoccupied. Passenger rail cars. Passenger rail cars may be aerated using either of the following 2 aeration procedures. Rail cars must remain posted until cleared for reoccupancy. Aeration Procedure 1. If onboard railcar ventilation systems are not operable, aerate railcar for a minimum of 6 hours using the following procedure. Step 1. Remove all tape seals and/or tarps. Step 2. Open all exterior railcar doors. Step 3. Open all internal doors, such as cabinets, closets, appliances, and sleeping berths. Step 4. In sleeper cars, turn all mattresses askew to expose cavities beneath sleeping berths. Step 5. Ventilate the rail cars for a minimum of 1 hour with enough portable fans to provide a minimum 4,000 CFM capacity per floor. A bi-level rail car would require 8,000 CFM capacity or greater through 4,000 CFM per floor. Direct fans in such a manner to create cross-ventilation of railcar. Step 6. After the minimum 6-hour aeration time, railcars may be reoccupied when the concentration of Vicane is 1 ppm or less, with all doors and windows closed and ventilation systems turned off as measured by a detection device with sufficient sensitivities such as Interscan, Miran, SAFL-RE, or Spectros Explorer gas analyzers. Aeration Procedure 2. If onboard railcar ventilation systems are operable, actively ventilate the railcar for a minimum of 2 hours using the following procedures. Step 1. Remove all taped seals and/or tarps. Step 2. Open all exterior car doors. Step 3. Open all internal doors such as cabinets, closets, appliances, and sleeping berths. Step 4. In sleeper cars, turn all mattresses askew to expose cavities beneath sleeping berths. Step 5. Turn on all onboard heating, ventilation, air conditioning, HVAC systems, and exhaust fans. Step 6. After the minimum 6-hour aeration time, railcars may be reoccupied when the concentration of Vicane is 1 ppm or less, with all doors and windows closed and ventilation systems turned off as measured by a detective device with sufficient sensitivities such as Interscan, Miran, SAFL-RE, or Spectros Explorer gas analyzers. Aeration Procedure 2. If onboard railcar ventilation systems are operable, actively ventilate the railcar for a minimum of 2 hours using the following procedures. Step 1. Remove all tape, seals, and/or tarps. Step 2. Open all exterior car doors. Step 3. Open all internal doors such as cabinets, closets, appliances, and sleeping berths. Step 4. In sleeper cars, turn all mattresses askew to expose cavities beneath sleeping berths. Step 5. Turn on all onboard heating, ventilation, air conditioning, HVAC systems, and exhaust fans. Step 6. In sleeper cars, turn on all operable wall or ceiling-mounted fans. Step 7. Ventilate the rail car with enough portable fans to provide a minimum 4,000 CFM capacity per floor in addition to onboard systems. A bi-level rail car would require 8,000 CFM capacity or greater through 4,000 CFM per floor. Direct fans in such a manner to create cross-ventilation of a rail car. Step 8. After the minimum 2 hours active ventilation aeration, the rail car may be reoccupied when the concentration of Vicane is 1 ppm or less, with all doors and windows closed and ventilation systems turned off, as measured by a detection device with sufficient sensitivity, such as an Interscan, Mirren, Cephalari, or Spectros Explorer gas analyzers. For more detailed information on the source and use of air monitoring devices or respirators, consult the Vicane Gas Fumigant Structural Fumigation Manual. Do not reoccupy fumigation site, i.e. building, ship, vehicle, or chamber, or move vehicle until aeration is complete. Warning signs must remain posted until aeration is determined to be complete. Next, we're going to take a look at the Douglas Products Safety Data Sheet. 2. Hazards Identification. Emergency Overview. This chemical is a product registered by the Environmental Protection Agency and is subject to certain labeling requirements under federal law. These requirements differ from the classification criteria and hazard information required for safety data sheets and for workload labels of non-EPA registered chemicals. Please see Section 15 for additional EPA information. Appearance, colorless gas, physical state gas, odor, odorless, classification, acute toxicity oral, Category 3, acute toxicity inhalation gases, Category 2, acute toxicity inhalation dust mist, Category 3, specific target organ toxicity single exposure, Category 1, specific target organ toxicity repeated exposure, Category 2, gases under pressure, liquefied gas. The signal word is danger. Hazard statements: toxic if swallowed, fatal if inhaled, causes damage to organs, may cause damage to organs through prolonged or repeated exposure, contains gas under pressure, may explode if heated. Precautionary statements: response: if exposed or concerned, give medical advice, attention. If inhaled, remove victim to fresh air and keep at rest in a position comfortable for breathing. Immediately call a poison control center or doctor physician. If swallowed, immediately call a poison center or doctor physician. Rinse mouth. 3. Composition information on ingredients. Chemical name: sulfuryl fluoride, CAS number 2699-79-8, weight 99.8%. Other ingredients: CAS number proprietary less than 0.1. If chemical name CAS number is proprietary and or weight percent is listed as a range, the specific chemical identity and or percentage of composition has been withheld as a trade secret. 4. First aid measures. Description of first aid measures, general advice. Provide this SDS to medical personnel for treatment. Any additional important symptoms and effects are described in Section 11, Toxicology Information. Eye contact, liquid. In case of frostbite, immediately flush eyes with water. Remove contact lenses. If present, after the first 5 minutes, then continue flushing eyes for at least 15 minutes. Obtain medical attention promptly, preferably by an ophthalmologist. Gas, no treatment required. 5. Firefighting measures. Suitable extinguishing media. This material does not burn. If exposed to fire from another source, use suitable extinguishing agent for that fire. Unsuitable extinguishing media not determined. Specific hazards arising from the chemical. Container may rupture from gas generation in a fire situation. Hazardous combustion products. Decomposition products can include and are not limited to hydrogen fluoride, sulfur oxides. Toxic gases are released during decomposition. 6. Accidental release measures. Personal precautions, protective equipment, and emergency procedures. Personal precautions. Isolate area. Stay upwind and out of low areas. Ventilate area of leak or spill. Use personal protection recommended in Section 8. Environmental precautions. Prevent from entering into soil, ditches, sewers, waterways, and/or groundwater. See Section 12, Ecological Information. 7. Handling and storage. Precautions for safe handling. Advice on safe handling. Handle in accordance with good industrial hygiene and safety practices. Conditions for safe storage, including any incompatibilities. Storage conditions. Keep container tightly closed and store in a cool, dry, and well-ventilated place. Keep store only in original container. Do not store near food, foodstuff, drugs, or portable water supplies. Incompatible materials. Strong bases. Exposure guidelines aid exposure controls/personal protection. This is going to be a read-only slide due to the numerical content. I'm going to give you a few moments to review this slide. Other information. Recommendations in this section are for manufacturing, commercial, blending, and packaging workers. Applicators and handlers should see the product label for proper personal protective equipment and clothing. Appropriate engineering controls. Engineering controls. Apply technical measures to comply with the occupational exposure limits, showers, eye wash stations, ventilation systems. Exhaust systems should be designed to move air away from the source of vapor/aerosol generation and people working at this point. Lethal concentrations may exist with poor ventilation. 9. Physical and chemical properties. Information on basic physical and chemical properties. Physical state, gas, appearance, colorless gas, color, colorless, odor, odorless, odor threshold, odorless, property, pH, values, not applicable, property melting point/freezing point, negative 137 degrees Celsius / negative 215 degrees Fahrenheit, boiling point / boiling range, negative 55.2 degrees Celsius / negative 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Remarks, method. 10. Stability and reactivity. Reactivity, not reactive under normal conditions. Chemical stability, stable under recommended storage conditions. Possibility of hazardous reactions, none under normal processing. Hazardous polymerization. Hazardous polymerization does not occur. Conditions to avoid. Exposure to elevated temperatures can cause product to decompose. Generation of gas during decomposition can cause pressure in closed systems. Incompatible materials, strong bases. Hazardous decomposition products. Decomposition products can include, and are not limited to, hydrogen fluoride, sulfur oxides. Toxic gases are released during decomposition. 11. Toxicological information. Information on likely routes of exposure. Eye contact, no hazard from gas. Liquid may cause frostbite. Skin contact. Prolonged skin contact is unlikely to result in absorption of harmful amounts. The dermal LD50 of sulfurofluoride has not been determined. Inhalation. Fatal if inhaled. Vapor concentrations are attainable which may be fatal with single exposure. Excessive exposure may cause severe irritation to upper respiratory tract, nose and throat, and lungs. 12. Ecological information. Ecotoxicity, very toxic to aquatic life. Component information. Due to wording on this slide, I'm going to let you review the 4 columns below on the ecological information of the Vicane gas. (13) Disposal considerations. Waste treatment methods. Disposal of waste. If waste and/or containers cannot be disposed of according to the product label directions, disposal of this material must be in accordance with your local or area regulatory authorities. This information presented below only applies to the material as supplied. The identification based on characteristics or listing may not apply if the material has been used or otherwise contaminated. It is the responsibility of the waste generator to determine the toxicity and physical properties of the material generated to determine the proper waste identification and disposal methods in compliance with applicable regulations. If the material as supplied becomes a waste, follow all applicable regional, national, and local laws. 14. Transportation information. Note: please see current shipping paper for most up-to-date shipping information, including exemptions and special circumstances. DOT UN/ID number UN 2191, proper shipping name, hazard class, sulfuric fluoride 2.3, IATA forbidden, IMDG, UN number UN 2191, proper shipping name, sulfuric fluoride, transport hazard classes marine 2.3, pollutant yes. 15. Regulatory information, international inventories, chemical name, sulfuric fluoride. Due to the nature of this chart on regulatory information on sulfuric fluoride, we're going to make this a read only. Please read this chart and look at the legend below to understand what you're seeing. "16. Other information." We're going to read the disclaimer section at the bottom of this chart, and then we're going to allow you to review the chart. Under disclaimer, the information provided in this safety data sheet is correct to the best of our knowledge, information, and belief at the date of its publication. The information given is designed only as a guidance for safe handling, use, processing, storage, transportation, disposal and release, and is not to be considered a warranty or quality specification. The information relates only to the specific material designated and may not be valid for such material used in combination with any other materials in any process unless specified in the text. Please take a few moments to review the top section of this chart. Vicane fact sheet for Vicane gas fumigant sulfuric fluoride. Vicane gas fumigant. In the interest of Douglas Products' commitment to product stewardship, this fact sheet is intended to provide basic information about the product and how it is used. If you have specific questions about your fumigation, refer to documents provided by the fumigator or call the fumigator listed on the warning signs posted on your structure. If you have questions about Vicane gas fumigant, the fumigant used, or the procedures described, call the Douglas Products Customer Information Center at 844-8-VICANE, 844-884-5263. Why buildings are fumigated. Insects that feed or tunnel into wood can seriously damage houses, apartments, or other dwellings or structures. Each year, termites or other wood-destroying insects damage more than 5 million homes. Other pests, such as bedbugs, may be dispersed throughout rooms and can be difficult to locate and control quickly and completely. Depending on the extent or location of the infestation, fumigation is the only total control method proven to eliminate certain infestations of wood-destroying insects, bedbugs, and other structure-infesting pests. How buildings are fumigated. Because Vicane is a gas, prior to fumigation, the structure is completely sealed. This serves to contain Vicane in the building so it can penetrate wood and building contents to thoroughly eliminate the pest. Depending on the construction of the building, the doors and windows may be sealed with tape and a plastic sheet, or the structure may be covered with a tarp. The building will remain sealed for 2 to 72 hours, depending on the specifics of the job. Warning signs are posted around the building notifying people to keep out. After the fumigation period is completed, a professional fumigator will aerate the structure using fans for a prescribed aeration period. Once the dwelling has been thoroughly aerated, the fumigator is required to measure the level of any fumigant remaining in the living space to ensure it is below the EPA-approved concentration for re-entry by the occupants. Extremely low levels of fumigant can remain for a short period of time in dead air spaces between walls and inside cabinets, as well as porous materials such as furniture. The small amount of fumigant in these areas will continue to dissipate for a few hours after the fumigation, but at levels well below the established safe re-entry concentration. Your building will not be cleared for reoccupancy until it is safe to enter. The fumigator will post a notice on your building indicating the day and time for re-entry. Structures can be occupied only when the concentration is 1 part per million or less. This represents a margin of safety. Laboratory animals have been exposed to 100 parts per million for 2 weeks with no adverse effects. Because Vicane is a true gas and not a vapor, aeration is rapid. Recent studies demonstrated that in most structures, levels are less than 1 part per million after the prescribed aeration period and have no detectable levels of Vicane within 24 hours after the start of aeration. Sulfuryl fluoride is a colorless, odorless gas, so a warning agent is added to the building that causes watery eyes and a scratchy throat. If you experience these symptoms in a structure that has been recently fumigated, you should leave immediately and call the pest control company to have your building retested. Sulfuryl fluoride. Potential health risks from overexposure. Sulfuryl fluoride is a gas that can potentially enter your body only through inhalation. Because it is a gas, it does not stay on dry surfaces. Therefore, there is no exposure from touching treated surfaces. Nervous system and respiratory irritation. Overexposure to high levels of sulfuryl fluoride can result in nose and throat irritation and nausea. At high concentrations, such as those used during the fumigation, it can cause excess fluid in the lungs, sleeplessness, pneumonia, and convulsions. These symptoms would be expected to appear within 8 hours after such an exposure. In the unlikely event you experience these symptoms in the building that has been recently fumigated, you should immediately consult your physician and call the pest control company to have your building retested. Additional studies. Sulfuryl fluoride has not been shown to cause birth defects in pregnant animals exposed under experimental conditions. In addition, current studies have demonstrated there are not mutagenic or genotoxic effects caused by exposure to sulfuryl fluoride. Questions. If you have specific questions about your fumigation, refer to documents provided by the fumigator or call the fumigator listed on the warning signs posted on your structure. Call the Douglas Products Customer Information Center at 844-8-VICANE, 844-884-5263 if you need additional information or have questions concerning this product. Safety precautions and homeowner preparation. Discuss the treatment program in advance with your pest control company so you fully understand what will be done and what you need to do. Carefully follow the instructions you are given about what items you are to remove from your building. Stay out of the treated building until it is cleared by your pest control company for re-entry. If you are interested or concerned, you should ask your pest control company to show the records of how your building was aerated before it was cleared for re-entry. You may wish to increase ventilation by opening doors and windows.
You have completed Part 1 of this program, Vicane Label, SDS, and Fact Sheet. Please continue to Part 2.
Wood-boring beetles in homes. After termites, wood-boring beetles are the most important wood-destroying insects in homes. The amount of damage that wood-boring beetles cause depends on many factors: the type of wood, hardwood or softwood, the moisture of the wood, and the environmental conditions at the infestation site all affect the severity of beetle damage. This course covers the biology, identification of true and false powder post beetles, old house borers, and control methods.
Wood-borne beetles in homes. The most important group of insects that attack wood in this way includes 3 closely related families of beetles: Lictidae, Botrytidae, and Anobidae, the larvae of which reduce wood to a mass of powdery or pelleted frass. They attack dead wood almost exclusively, especially dried and cured lumber, and several generations can reinfest the same piece of wood until only the outer shell remains, riddled with exit holes. Beneath the surface of the infested wood are frass-filled galleries or tunnels, usually coursing along the grain of the wood. Woodborne beetles in homes. The damage caused by these three families of beetles can be identified as follows. The true powder post beetles, Lictidae, loosely fill their galleries with very fine powder, similar in appearance to face powder. The false powder post beetles, Batricidae, tightly pack their galleries with a coarser boring dust, often containing small wood fragments. And the death watch beetles, Anobidae, fill their galleries with small pellets. The frass in the galleries of the Bostridids and the Anobids is not only coarser than that of the Lictids, but tends to stick together. Woodborne beetles in homes. Although all these beetles have sometimes been collectively referred to as powder post beetles, in a more definitive sense, the term should apply only to the Lictids, for their larvae are the only ones that produce a fine powder-like dust in their galleries. Inspection and proper identification. Proper identification is critical. If you don't correctly identify the species, it is impossible to make the proper recommendation. Tools that are invaluable for proper identification are on the following slide. There are many publications for beetle identification, but I can recommend these because they are very comprehensive, smaller size, and inexpensive. The two PCT field guides for the management of structure infesting beetles by Stoy A. Hedges and Dr. Mark S. Lacey. Tools for inspection. Woodborne beetles in homes. In this country, Lictids are second only to termites in their destructiveness to wood and wood products, but confine their attacks to large pored hardwoods such as oak, ash, hickory, mahogany, and bamboo. It's common to find Lictids in newly installed hardwood flooring. Lictids are generally brought into buildings in wood that contain their eggs or larvae. Lumber should be examined for signs of infestation. Once in a home, hardwood items are usually finished with paint, varnish, shellac, sealer, or wax, treatments which prevent oviposition by adult beetles. Lictid beetles. True powder post beetles are only 1/10 to 1/5 inch in length and range in color from reddish brown to black. True powder post beetles can damage the hardwood furniture such as walnut and oak. Lictid damage photos. Beetles in the flooring, beetles in the hardwood floor, beetles in the bamboo chair, and beetles in newly installed cabinets. Powder post beetles inside cabinet at the back corner. Description. In the United States, there are more than 35 kinds of lictid beetles. These are considered the true powder post beetles. Generally, adult lictid beetles are 1/8 to 1/4 inch long. They are slender and range in color from reddish brown to black. Their heads are obvious when these insects are viewed from above. Powdery wood dust from powder post beetles often collects in piles in crawl spaces. Sometimes powder post beetle damage creates lines of wood dust on infested lumber. Habits. Lictid beetles infest only hardwoods, such as oak and walnut. They can live in wood with a wide moisture range from a dry 8% to a very moist 32%. Adult lictids mate soon after they emerge from infested wood. Oviposition begins 2 or 3 days later and continues for a week or two, most of the eggs being laid within the first 7 or 8 days. The female has a long, flexible ovipositor that she inserts deeply into the pores of hardwoods, laying one or several eggs in a pore. Lictid beetles. Only the larvae damage wood. The female lays an average of 20 to 50 eggs in crevices or on the ends of boards. When they hatch, the tiny larvae bore down into the wood. As the larvae grow, they bore to a point just underneath the surface of the wood where they change into adults. Lictid beetles. The incubation period can range from 1 to 3 weeks, depending on temperature. The emerging larva is white, straight-bodied, and bears a pair of small spines at the rear. After the first molt, the larva assumes a curved form. The young larva usually tunnels with the grain of the wood, but later takes on an irregular course, sometimes intersecting its earlier track or the tunnels of other larvae. The tunnels are packed with a fine, powder-like dust. The larvae do not penetrate to the surface, but, like termites, leave a thin, unbroken surface layer. Outdoors, the larvae chiefly grow during spring and summer, but in heated rooms they can develop continuously. Lictid beetles. A mature lictid larva is usually less than 5 millimeters long, curved, and enlarged at the thorax. Its antennae are 3-segmented and have an accessory appendage. The abdomen bears 8 spiracles, and the most posterior pair is 6 times larger than the others. The legs are distinct, 3-segmented, and unclawed. In contrast to the lictid larva, the larvae of the anabids do not have an enlarged posterior spiracle, and they have 5 segmented legs, with the terminal segment clawed. The mature lictid larva bores to a point near the surface of the wood and builds a pupal chamber. The pupal period lasts from 12 days to a month. Lictid beetles. After metamorphosis, the adult chews its way to the surface, forms an exit hole 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter, and generally pushes some of the fine dust out of the hole when emerging. Small piles of dust are common near new emergence holes. Although the larva contains its burrowing sapwood, if the adult has no other way of emerging, it can bore its way through hardwood, softwood, asbestos, lead sheeting, or plaster. Lictid beetles. The life cycle from egg laying to emergence of adults ordinarily requires 9 to 12 months, but under exceptionally favorable conditions of high temperature and high starch content of wood, that period may be reduced to only 6 or 7 months. 2 generations a year are not uncommon in the southern United States, but under adverse conditions of temperature and nutrients, the life cycle may be prolonged to 2.5 to 4 years or longer. Lictid beetles. After they change, the adults cut a 1/32 to 1/16 inch circular exit hole in the surface of the wood. Often, powdery wood dust created by the beetle's feeding is pushed out as the adult emerges. This is why they are called powder post beetles. Males and females exit at the same time and mate, and the new generation of females lay eggs again. The entire life cycle for most lictid beetles takes 9 to 12 months. Factors affecting lictid infestation. Starch content of wood. Lictid beetles primarily infest the sapwood of hardwoods. Ash, hickory, maple, and oak are preferred, but many other hardwoods are sometimes damaged. Bamboo, which is grass, not a hardwood, is readily attacked. Their chief source of food is starch, and whatever sugar and protein may be present. Lictids will not oviposit in sapwood with a starch content of less than 30%, and the greater the concentration of starch, the better they thrive. Factors affecting lictid infestation. Water content of wood. A definite range of water content is also necessary. Lictids can live in wood with a water content of between 8 and 32%. Since the water content of green wood is commonly about 50% and can be even higher, it is obvious why attack by powder post beetles is generally confined to partially or wholly seasoned wood. The moisture content of seasoned wood in the United States is an average between 12 and 15%. The greatest lictid beetle activity is found in wood with a moisture content of from 10 to 20%. Lictids infest newly seasoned hardwoods with a high starch content such as oak, hickory, walnut, ash, and poplar. Lictids will reinfest wood at the areas adults emerge. Anabid powder post beetles. Description. There are more than 200 kinds of anabid beetles, of which very few infest wood. Most anabid beetles found in homes, like drugstore beetles, infest grain products. The few that do infest wood are also called powder post beetles or death watch beetles. The wood-infesting anabids range from 1/8 to 1/4 inch in length. Their color ranges from reddish browns to nearly black. The body segment just behind the head is hood-like and completely covers the head when the insect is viewed from above. Anabid powder post beetles. Anabids range from 1.8 to 8 millimeters in length and are highly variable in body form, ranging from narrow and elongate to nearly circular from the dorsal aspect. When viewed from above, the hood-like or bell-shaped pronotum usually conceals the head, as in the case of the Bostrididae, but is unlike that of the true powder post beetles, Lectidae, in which the head is not hidden when viewed from above. Anabid powder post beetles. The last 3 segments of the antenna are usually lengthened and broadened, or simply lengthened, but in some species the antennae are either serrate, sawtoothed, or pectinate, comb-shaped. The antenna clubs of Lactus have only 2 segments. The tibiae lack the spurs found on the tibiae of the Lactus and ostrich. The tarsa are 5-segmented with divaricate, widely separated claws. Habits. Anabids attack both hardwoods and softwoods and will feed on either newly seasoned or older wood. Although they feed mainly on the sapwood, they can also damage heartwood that is close to the sapwood. In the wild, they live in dead tree limbs or in bark-free scars on the trunks. They generally prefer wood in cool locations with moisture levels above 14%. Anabids are most common beetles infesting crawl spaces and outbuildings. Female anabid beetles usually lay fewer than 50 eggs under wood splinters, in cracks, or in old exit holes. Like lactid beetles, the small anabid larvae bore into the wood where they eat and develop.
When the larvae change into adults, they chew round, exit holes between 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch in diameter. The male and female emerge together and mate, and the female deposits her eggs. Though the females fly well and can lay eggs at new locations, they are most likely to lay their eggs on the board from which they emerged. Most anobid beetles take 2 to 3 years to complete their development.
Habits. Generally, bustard beetles cause much less damage in homes than lictid or anabid beetles. Most bustard beetles bore into the freshly cut hardwoods, but a few will attack softwoods. Unlike lictid or anabid beetles, both adults and larvae of the bustard beetle damage wood. Adult females bore egg tunnels into the wood to deposit their eggs. After hatching, the larvae tunnel into the wood to feed and grow. Under most conditions, the larvae complete their development by the spring of the year following egg laying. Adults cut 3/32 to 9/32 inch round exit holes when they emerge. The adults rarely reinfest the wood from which they emerge. Death watch beetle. The death watch beetle is so named because of a mating signal produced by each sex by striking its head against the surface on which it stands. This tapping was once considered to be foreboding sound or death signal by superstitious people. Death watch beetles seldom, if ever, fly, although they will sometimes flutter their wings when thrown into the air. Death watch beetle. Wood must be partially pre-digested by fungi before the death watch beetle can utilize it. In nature, it attacks several hardwood species. Indoors, it infests hardwood timber that was at some time infected with fungi. Death watch beetle. The death watch beetle is about 7 millimeters long, dark grayish brown, with a pattern of yellowish scale-like hairs on the pronotum and the elytra. If the elytra are old and worn, the beetle may appear more reddish and shining. The antennae are 11 segmented, and the last 3 segments are somewhat enlarged as long as the preceding 5 combined. Circular emergence holes of the death watch beetle are about 3 millimeters in diameter, about twice as large as those of the furniture beetle. The frass consists of relatively large lenticular or bun-shaped pellets characteristic of the species. Death watch beetle. The creamy white larva of the death watch beetle is the largest of the anabid larvae, being up to 11 millimeters long. The head is yellowish and the mandibles are nearly black. The eyes consist of 2 black spots on each side of the head. Spinules occur dorsally on the first 8 abdominal segments and laterally and ventrically on the 9th and 10th segments. Death watch beetle. The female lays her eggs in small clusters, usually of 3 or 4, on rough surfaces, in cracks, or just inside the emergence holes. When first laid, the eggs are sticky and adhere together. They are whitish, oval, smooth throughout, and about twice as large as those of the furniture beetle. Usually 40 to 60 eggs are laid. They hatch in 2 to 3 weeks. Under favorable conditions of food and temperature, the death watch beetle may go through its life cycle in a year, but this period may be prolonged to as much as 10 years. Black polychaean. This is a cylindrical coal-black beetle, 11 to 22 millimeters long and rather atypical of the bustards. Unlike most of this family, the head is prominent and exerted. The pronotum is oval, not hood-like, and has no tubercles. The punctures on the head and the pronotum are coarse, and on the elytra they are fine. This species occurs in the Pacific Coast states and in Arizona, where it is the largest member of the genus. It attacks almost any of the softwoods and several of the hardwoods. Black polychaean. As a pest, it is the most common in a 3-ply panel used for making desks and similar articles. The beetles fly at night and can attack stacked plywood. The larvae burrow in the inner portion of the panel in a softwood such as basswood, where they require 1 or more years to complete their development. Their presence is not discovered until the adults emerge. burrowing through the outer layers of hardwood such as oak or mahogany, leaving emergence holes about 7 millimeters in diameter. Black polychaeon. The beetle does not infest finished products after manufacture, and its emergence holes will indicate that a portion of the wood was infested before manufacture. Other bostridids. Probably the most common bostridid in the eastern United States is the red-shouldered shot-hole borer, which can attack practically any freshly cut and partially seasoned hardwood and has been found attacking partially seasoned pecan lumber. It principally attacks the wood of hickory and persimmon, although it has been found in elm and other species. Other bostridids. Sometimes this beetle causes a 50% loss in these wood products. In the usual manner of bostridid beetles, the adult bores in from the outside and down through the bark of the freshly cut wood. It mines a tunnel in the wood for a short distance, following the annual rings, and this serves as an egg tunnel. Most of the larval boring is in the sapwood, which is ultimately destroyed. Old house borers. Description. The old house borer belongs to a group called cerambicid beetles, which are also known as longhorn beetles. Most longhorn beetles are wood borers in the larval stage, but only the old house borer is a serious pest in homes. Adult old house borers range from 5/8 to 1 inch in length. They are brownish black in color, with many gray hairs on the head and forepart of the body. The segment just behind the head has a shiny raised bump on each side, giving it the appearance of a face. The old house borer is one of the largest wood-infesting beetles. These beetles cut 1/4 to 3/8 inch oval holes when they emerge. Habits. Old house borers infest softwoods, especially pine. They can be found in old houses, as their name suggests, but they are actually more common in new homes. The females lay about 50 eggs in cracks and in crevices in wood. The larvae penetrate the wood to feed, but they often stay near the surface. Larvae usually require 2 to 3 years to develop in wood with 15 to 25% moisture, but they can take as long as 15 years to develop in very dry wood. Usually larvae become adults in the spring, but they may not emerge immediately. When they do exit, the adults cut oval holes about 1/4 to 3/8 inch in diameter. Old house borers will reinfest wood adults have emerged from. Adults are normally most active in June and July. Lead cable borer. Lead cable borers are common along the Pacific coast, particularly in California and southern Oregon, occurring at all elevations up to 5,300 feet. Outdoors, they normally infest dead and seasoned oak, but they will also infest acacia, eucalyptus, maple, California laurel, elm, chestnut, and other hardwoods. They can reinfest the wood from which they emerge. They occasionally attack newly painted houses, apparently being attracted to them, and have been known to infest hardwood paneling and floors. They are attracted to corks in bottles containing alcoholic beverages, or to hard liquors, or to wine in oak casks, and can damage the casks severely. Cable borer. Description. The lead cable borer is 5 to 6 millimeters long, cylindrical, brown or reddish brown to black, usually black with reddish mouthparts, legs, and antennae. The antennae are 8-segmented, with the 3 terminal segments much enlarged, and most of the head is concealed from above by the hood-like pronotum, as it is generally the case with the bostridids. The prothorax has many tubercles on the anterior half, and the elytra have deep linear punctures. Life cycle. The dull white or cream-colored egg is very elongate, averaging 2.1 millimeters in length, including the stem, and 0.14 millimeters in width. It hatches in about 3 weeks. The larva mines parallel with the grain of the wood, packing its borings behind it, and becoming full-grown after 6 molts and in a period of about 9 months. By the time it is ready to pupate, it has mined out a gallery 50 to 60 centimeters long. Life cycle. The pupal stage lasts about 14 days, and the adult remains in the wood for a month to 6 weeks, hardening and maturing and becoming darker brown and finally black. The adult then eats its way out of the outer wood and bark. After emerging, the male lives from 10 to 18 days and the females 30 to 44 days, provided they both have access to wood. Otherwise, both sexes die in 5 to 7 days. There is 1 generation a year. Control. There are several factors you should consider before starting control measures for wood-boring beetles. The first is that no control may be necessary. Many homes have some damage from wood-boring beetles. However, in many cases, the damage is very minor and old, which means that all the beetles have died. Unless you see beetles or fresh wood powder around the holes, chemical treatment is not necessary. Fresh wood powder is usually light in color and does not clump. Old wood powder is often yellowed and clumps together. Also, there are many beetles in nature that attack wood but do not cause serious damage or reinfest lumber in homes. It is important to know which beetles before you proceed to the treatment stage. With most buildings having central air conditioning and heating, the potential for widespread damage has decreased. In fact, even with the more serious lichded and antibid beetles, if a house has no moisture problems, has a central cooling and heating system, and is not unoccupied for long periods, serious problems are not likely. Treatment options. The type of treatment selected for control of powder post beetles will depend on a number of circumstances, among them the size of the infested area. For active wood-boring beetle infestation, several different spot treatments are possible. These include controlling wood moisture, using surface covers, mechanical remover, heating, and insecticide treatments such as topical applications of borates or by direct injection. Fumigation. For the treatment of a large infested area such as an entire house, tent fumigation may be the only practical procedure. Even if only a few beetles are found and believed to be a localized infestation, a complete fumigation of the entire structure is the most reliable way to control the infestation. Fumigation. If powder post beetles are discovered in furniture or new wood flooring prior to installation, a chamber or container fumigation may be the best solution to control the infestation. Keep in mind the PPB require a 10x dosage and the black polycan are not on the Vicane label. Moisture problems are most commonly found in the lumber in crawl spaces. A crawl space should be well ventilated and in many cases should have a vapor barrier. Generally, plastic sheets 4 or 6 mil polyethylene covering 80 to 90% of the crawl space will keep the lumber from getting too moist. Surface cover, including paint, polyurethane, and water sealants, will protect wood from moisture problems and help prevent wood-boring beetles from penetrating the wood. However, surface treatments usually do not prevent beetles already in wood from emerging. If an infestation is limited to a few pieces of lumber, replacing the wood may be the best control strategy. Photos, courtesy of photographers published on bugwood.org, ITP note. Pest and Diseases Image Library, bugwood.org. USDA Forest Service, Wood Products Insect Labs, USDA Forest Service, bugwood.org. Jack Lanius, American Pest CEUs.
Damage by common wood-boring beetles. In this slide, you're going to see we got several categories. First is going to be the insect type, then the wood type, the age of the wood, shape and size of holes, and reinfestation. For example, if we start on the left and talk about anobid beetles, we're going to see the wood type that they attack is soft and hard. The age of the wood is going to be new and old. The hole is going to be round, so you're going to see the shape and size would be 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. And do they reinfest wood? Yes, they do. Secondly, we're going to talk about the bostricid beetles, which they attack soft and hard wood. The age of the wood is going to be new. Their holes are round 3/32 to 9/32 of an inch. And do they reinfest? It's actually rarely. Our third beetle is going to be lichded beetles, and they attack hard wood, new and old. Their holes are round 1/32 to 3/16 of an inch, and they do reinfest. Our final beetle is going to be the old house borer. The wood type they attack is soft, new and old wood. Their holes are oval, 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch, and do they reinfest? Is yes. New wood is going to be freshly cut or unseasoned lumber. Old wood is seasoned or dried lumber. Many other wood-boring beetles can initially infest new wood in homes, but their damage is limited and they do not reinfest. Another label we're going to look at as part of our training is called Pentashield. This is a penetrating fungicide, termiticide, and preservative. It's actually considered a clear wood preservative. Use Penashield to control wood decay and insect damage on all interior and exterior wood. This meets AWPA standard M4 for end cuts. The active ingredient is going to be disodium octaborate tetrahydrate with active ingredients of 8.5%. Other ingredients total 91.5%. This is an EPA registered product with the registration number 64405-5. Our next section of the label is going to be on first aid. If swallow, call a poison control center or doctor immediately for treatment advice. Have person sip a glass of water if able to swallow. Do not induce vomiting unless told to do so by poison control center or doctor. Do not give anything by mouth to an unconscious person. Continuing our discussion on first aid section of the label, if the products on your skin or clothing, take off contaminated clothing. Rinse skin immediately with plenty of water for 15 to 20 minutes. Call a poison control center or doctor for treatment advice. Further in the first aid section of the label, if the product is in your eyes, hold eye open and rinse slowly and gently with water for 15 to 20 minutes. Remove contact lenses if present. After the first 5 minutes, then continue rinsing the eye. Call a poison control center or doctor for treatment advice. Have the product container or label with you when calling a poison control center or doctor or going for treatment. You may also contact 800-424-9300 for emergency medical treatment. Our next section of the label is going to be on precautionary statements. Caution, harmful if swallowed or absorbed through the skin. Causes eye irritation. Avoid contact with skin, eyes, or clothing. Wash thoroughly with soap and water after handling. These are very important statements that everybody needs to read on these labels. Obviously, you know if something's swallowed or absorbed through the skin, it's probably going to be harmful. Just keep in mind this product is going to cause eye irritation as well, so you really want to avoid contact with the skin, eyes, or clothing, and just make sure you wash thoroughly with soap and water after handling. You definitely don't want these pesticides on your hands, and then you eat or something like that, and then you're getting it obviously in your system and things like that. You definitely don't want to do. We're now going to talk about the personal protective equipment on the label, PPE. Applicators and other handlers must wear long-sleeve shirts and long pants, chemical-resistant or water-repellent gloves, shoes, plus socks. This is really important, guys. I know a lot of people I've seen through the years will just go out, do pesticide applications in short-sleeve shirts. Don't worry about if they're wearing shorts. These things are a major problem, so really follow these labels and protect your skin from the product. You may think, well, I'm not going to get it on me, but I can tell you, if you're treating in shorts or without a long sleeve shirt on, basically the wind or anything else is going to blow this product and it's going to get on your skin. And obviously it makes sense to wear gloves because your hands are an easy area for products to get on. And then of course shoes plus socks. I don't know why that's on there, but I think common sense tells us we're definitely going to wear those when handling a pesticide. Our next thing on the label is going to be environmental hazards. Wood treatment facilities must take steps to prevent runoff of the product into waterways. This is a really big deal. I can tell anybody that's an outdoorsman, or even if you just like seeing the natural environment, or even our drinking water or anything else, these types of products can be a problem. So we really need to think about where these products go when it comes to runoff. So treated material stored outdoors within 100 feet of a pond, lake, stream, or river must be covered, surrounded by a containment berm, or otherwise protected to prevent surface water runoff. The containment berm must be of sufficient height to prevent runoff during heavy rainfall events. Do not apply directly to water, to areas where surface water is present, or to intertidal areas below the mean high water mark. Do not contaminate water when disposing of equipment wash waters, or rinsate. So some of this stuff is pretty straightforward, but just keep in mind if you're in an area where there might be water that comes up, flooding, or intertidal areas, something you really need to think about was storing this. I know most of you probably would, but I've seen pesticide storage sites that were in water areas that kind of shocked me. So keep in mind it's very important that these types of products do not end up in an area where water can take them out somewhere. In our next section of the label, directions for use, it is a violation of federal law to use this product in a manner inconsistent with its labeling. Use of this product to prevent bed bugs is prohibited. Application to carpets is prohibited. So these are some pretty important things. Obviously, any pesticide, if you've taken any of our courses, you know we say this over and over again. The label is the law, and it is a violation of federal law to use any product outside of its label. And I'm going to reiterate something I always say. You don't want to use the product outside of its label. A, it could cause harm to you or the environment around you, people, pets, waterways, whatever the case may be. But also, the product itself doesn't work any better. It's not like if you use the product outside of the label or add more that you're going to get a better result. You also have to think about things like the chemical cost itself. So if I'm using the product and I'm putting double the rate or whatever the case may be, this is costing me and or my company a lot of money. So you really need to think about these sections of the label. Follow the label. It's been tested by the EPA, and you know the formulation is exactly what it should be. Now, I'm also looking at the fact that this can't be used for bed bugs. I'm not sure why that's on there, but I always hear a lot of different people telling me they're using a lot of products for bed bugs. So obviously this is not a bed bug product. And applications to carpets is prohibited. Once again, good to know. This is not even a product you can use in cracks and crevices on carpets or anything like that. Notice, read and understand the entire label before using. Once again, this is a huge thing in the pest management industry. You really do need to read and understand each label before you use it. I know that's not a common thing per se because a lot of times you're in a hurry, you've got a lot of homes or businesses you need to take care of, but reading and understanding the label is very important. And then think of it like this. Once you're using a product, you've read and you understand the label, at that point you're going to know most of it by heart. You're not going to have to keep doing this over and over again, but especially the first few times you use a product, really read that label. And of course, use only according to label directions, which we already just discussed. Before buying or using this product, read warranty disclaimer and limitation of remedy statements found elsewhere on the label. If the terms are unacceptable, return unopened package to the seller for a full refund of the purchase price. Otherwise, use by the buyer or any other user constitutes acceptance of the terms under warranty disclaimer and limitation of remedies. Safe handling procedures: clean spills and overspray with a damp cloth or absorb with appropriate materials. When applying this product in confined spaces, it is recommended that ventilation or an exhaust system be provided. Once again, there's some really good information in here. Basically, they're saying you do need to clean up overspray with a damp cloth or absorb it with appropriate materials. Also see huge importance when they say when applying this product in confined spaces, it is recommended that ventilation or an exhaust system be provided. That's a big thing to me. Let's say you're in a crawl space or an attic or something like that and you're going to use this product. You definitely want to make sure there's some ventilation, or probably even think about a respirator. Obviously follow what the label says. We just have to keep in mind that you don't want to be in a confined space just breathing in a product like this. If the label says that, it's definitely important for you. You do not want to be breathing this in, and you definitely don't want to be in an unventilated area. In our next section of the label, product information, Penashield is a ready-to-use product that is applied to wood. Penashield will both control and help prevent infestations of wood-destroying organisms such as subterranean, which includes formosan and drywood termites, wood-boring beetles, carpenter ants, and decay fungi. It may take several days for the infestation to be controlled. However, any termites that start to ingest treated wood or that are directly sprayed will die. As a termiticide, this product is not intended as a substitute for whole structure treatment. Surface preparation is going to involve applying only to bare dry wood. This is another important thing. Obviously, if wood has a finish, it's not going to work well with a product like this. You may ask why. Well, wood is very porous, so it's important to understand that with wood being porous, it absorbs things. So if a piece of wood has paint or a lacquer or varnish finish, this product is not going to absorb into the wood, which is exactly how it's designed to do. So make sure you're using this only on bare, dry wood. Some areas, like maybe an attic or a crawl space, would have this type of wood. Obviously, a lot of you may have done treatments like that, but just keep in mind, if the wood's wet or it has a finish on it, you're definitely not going to want to apply this product. And that may even make sense outdoors because you can use it outdoors. If wood has been rained on or something like that, I definitely wouldn't put this product on it until it dries out. Maintenance of treated surfaces. Penishield may be applied as needed to exterior, unfinished wood surfaces. Interior surface treatments of existing wood are considered permanent and do not require reapplication or coating except in situations involving repeated moisture contact or high humidity, such as shower stalls, bathhouses, and saunas. So it's very important, obviously, if this is done on an exterior, you may need to look in the future to see if it needs to be treated again or at what point it needs to be treated. Obviously, interior surfaces, once this product's on there, it's not going anywhere unless it is in a wet area like a bathroom or an area of high humidity. So that makes sense because those types of areas are going to break down any pesticide type of product, especially shower stalls, something like that, where the moisture is just permeating into the wood. The cleanup section of the label on this product is pretty simple. You're going to use soap and water to clean up tools. That brings us to the application instructions portion of our label. Apply Penishield only to bare wood or to wood surfaces where an intact water repellent barrier is not present. Either brush on or apply with a low pressure sprayer. Small wooden items, field cuts, or end cuts may also be treated by dipping. Return unused product to original container and seal tightly. Always clean and or flush equipment and lines with water after each use. When applying more than one coat, wait at least 20 minutes between applications. When spraying attics or overhead interior areas, cover all surfaces below the treated area with plastic sheathing. Do not apply in food serving areas while food is exposed. When applying Penishield to exterior surfaces, cover nearby plants and grasses with plastic. A couple quick things on this section of the label. I like the idea of either brush on or apply with a low pressure sprayer. That's a good point made because obviously you can use a brush with a product like this in some areas. I can tell you I've done treatments in large churches. We've had even wooden organs and things where we've actually brushed the product on because inside the equipment itself there were areas that didn't have any treatment on the surface, didn't have any paint or varnish or lacquer or anything like that, so we were able to brush it on. Obviously, low pressure sprayers are great because you don't want to spray this with high pressure like a termite rig or something like that because obviously you're going to have problems with basically it just splashing everywhere and coming back off. You're always going to want to clean and or flush equipment and lines with water after use. I can tell you this for a fact, this type of product will harden and crystallize in your sprayers. You'll have major problems if you don't. Clean this out after use. I run a whole 3 gallons through my sprayers after I use it. And obviously when applying more than one coat, wait at least 20 minutes between applications. That's a pretty big deal because you have to remember that if you don't wait that 20 minutes and allow the first coat to dry, you're really just knocking it off when you treat again. Obviously, you can imagine not applying this in food serving areas when food is exposed. That kind of goes without saying. But also, when applying Penishield to exterior surfaces, cover nearby plants and grasses with plastic. I can tell you from experience, if you get overspray on grasses or plants, it will kill them. As a matter of fact, I've seen technicians in our industry use this to kill all the grass in their yard when they're going to resod their yard. Obviously, that's not on the label, but I can tell you the person that did this, it definitely killed all their grass, their plants, and everything, and they were really surprised. So that just let me know up front, this product's going to kill anything that's growing, so make sure any ornamentals or grasses that you need to be protected, that they are covered before you use this product. Again, looking further down the label, storage and disposal, do not contaminate water, food, or feed by storage and disposal. Pesticide storage, store in a dry place. Do not store where children or animals may gain access. Protect from freezing. Again, there's some good things here. We already know we don't want to contaminate water, food, or feed. Obviously, that kind of goes without saying. But you need to store this in a dry place like we talked about before. But definitely keep out of reach of children. That's on the label here at the top in big letters. But just keep in mind that's common sense. Obviously, we don't want children or animals to gain access. And protect this product from freezing. There again is a great thing for you to know. If you're in a climate where it can go below 32 degrees or even below 40, you need to think about that. A product like this can freeze. Obviously, you can't use it if it's frozen anyways, but even when it thaws out, you still can't use the product again. So if it freezes, basically the product is no good and needs to be disposed of correctly. Pesticide disposal. Waste resulting from the use of this product may be disposed of on site or at approved waste disposal facility. Container handling, non-refillable container, do not reuse or refill this container. Offer for recycling if available, or reconditioning if appropriate. Otherwise, call your local solid waste agency for disposal instructions. Promptly triple rinse or equivalent container after emptying. Triple rinse as follows. Empty the remaining contents into application equipment or a mixed tank and drain for 10 seconds after the flow begins to drip. Fill the container 1/4 full with water and recap. Shake for 10 seconds. Pour rinseate into application equipment or a mixed tank or store rinseate for later use or disposal. Drain for 10 seconds after the flow begins to drip. Repeat this procedure. Alright guys, so pesticide disposal is a huge pet peeve for me. Once again, I know how busy technicians are and I know it's something that you really don't want to have to spend a lot of time on. Just keep in mind you're the frontline protectors of our environment when handling these products. Please make sure you dispose of this on-site or an approved waste disposal facility. On the container handling, this is a non-refillable container. Obviously, you're not going to reuse or refill the container. There'd be no reason to anyways. Now, you do want to remember you're going to use the triple rinse method on this. So obviously you need to empty the remaining contents into application equipment or mix a tank and drain for 10 seconds after the flow begins to drip. So keep in mind, you're going to mix this into the container. You're going to fill the container 1/4 full with water and recap. Shake for 10 seconds. Then pour that rinseate into application equipment or mix a tank or store rinseate for later use or disposal. Now I'm going to tell you this. Basically, most people don't want to store this because if you're not going to reuse it within a reasonable amount of time, it's not going to be good. Keep in mind the best thing to do when you're at a site is don't mix up more than you need. Make sure not to mix up 5 gallons of product if you're only going to use 3. You can calculate before you even mix what you need, and that's really going to solve the issue of you having all this extra product. And then obviously, if you do have any rinseate, or you probably will in most cases, but make sure you store it, but also try to use it within a reasonable amount of time because these products are definitely not going to be good in water indefinitely. Warranty disclaimer. To the extent not prohibited by applicable law, manufacturer warrants that this product conforms to chemical description on the label and is reasonably fit for the purposes stated on the label when used in strict accordance with the directions, subject to the inherent risks set forth below. To the extent not prohibited by applicable law, manufacturer makes no other express or implied warranty of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose or any other express or implied warranty. Inherent risk of use. The directions for use and use of this product are believed to be adequate and must carefully be followed. It is impossible to eliminate all risk associated with use of the product. Lack of performance and other intended consequences may result because of such factors as a use of product contrary to label instructions, abnormal conditions, the presence of other materials, climatic conditions, or the manner of use application, all of which are beyond the control of the manufacturer. To the extent not prohibited by applicable law, the buyer-user assumes all such risk. So keep in mind, if you're using this product correctly according to the label, a lot of these risks can be negated to a reasonable point. There's always going to be different environmental conditions. We talked about it. But if you're wearing the PPE and you're making sure that this stuff's not blowing back in your face, let's say, then you're really going to be a lot more protected. So just keep in mind, follow the label instructions for maximum safety and effectiveness. In this section of the label, we're going to talk a little bit about limitation of remedies to the extent not prohibited by applicable law, the exclusive remedy for losses or damages resulting from this product, including claims based on contract, negligence, strict liability, or other legal theories, should be limited to, at manufacturer's election, one of the following: refund of purchase price paid by the buyer or user for the product bought, or 2, replacement of the amount of product used. So keep in mind, this is just some legalese, but it's letting you know that losses or damages are limited to just refund or replacement of the product. Once again, it's up to you to use it correctly, make sure that it works right because you're doing the application correctly, and to protect yourself from the product itself by using the label directions and the PPE and things like that. Another method for controlling like sources of fungi would be the use of borates. Products like Timbor and Boracare are a pretty common option. I'm sure many of you have probably seen or heard of this if you've been involved in crawl space work at all. These are nice products. I mean, they're basically a sodium salt base. They work pretty well. They have a long residual. Definitely make sure you read the label when using these types of products, because there are a lot of factors to keep in mind. You're going to be spraying a product like this. It's going to have some overspray. So always follow the label. But I just kind of wanted to introduce you to these types of products, these borates, because they do work really well in crawl spaces, especially on things like the wood down there. As part of this training, we wanted to go over the Boracare label. As you can see in the photo here, this is just kind of showing a Boracare label itself. But I kind of want to go over it a little bit on the next few slides, because I feel like this is a product that's commonly used in crawl spaces. But a lot of people also have trouble deciphering and understanding the label. So in the next few slides, we're going to go over Boracare just a little bit. Looking at the top of the Boracare label, I took some of the verbiage off there, but basically Boracare itself is a termiticide, insecticide, fungicide. It's a concentrate for the prevention and control of things like subterranean termites, Formosan termites, drywood termites, carpenter ants. It's also listed for like wood destroying beetles, fungi, rot, and algae. So that's just some of the things that you can control with Boracare. So guys, anytime we talk about a label, obviously you're going to need to read the label before you applicate with any products. I know I've mentioned that time and time again. I'm just showing you different sections of it just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that are on the label. So Boracare itself is for use in and around residential, institutional, and commercial structures, including homes, apartments, garages, museums, public and private institutions, schools, hotels, hospitals, kennels, places like stables, farm buildings, trucks, trailers, warehouses, and non-food areas of supermarkets, restaurants, and even food processing plants. So Boracare itself has a pretty broad label. There's a lot of areas you can use it in. I know, again, we're focusing on crawl spaces, but I can also tell you that in each one of these commercial types of structures, you can have crawl spaces. It's very common for schools to have crawl spaces, and it's kind of nice that a product like this can be used in places like schools. As we look a little bit deeper into the Boracare label, It's important that you know that the active ingredient in this is disodium octaborate tetrahydrate. So that's good to know, right? Because basically it's sodium and borates. So this is actually one of the safer products out there. I don't want to say safe, but I want to let you know that this is not a real toxic, a real strong product. You're always going to make sure you know what the caution words and everything like that are. Like on this label, it says keep out of reach of children with the caution word. So obviously it's not something you want a kid to get into and pour on themselves or anything like that. But with that active ingredient being pretty non-toxic for humans and vertebrates, that really helps out. Otherwise, this product does have an EPA registration number. So again, that's great that this product has been tested and approved by the EPA. Our next section on the BoraCare label is going to be some precautionary statements. This is going to have some hazards to humans and domestic animals. So once again, it's fairly non-toxic, but you also got to understand you don't want to get this on your body and you don't want other people to come into contact with it. You're going to need to do things like wear long sleeve shirts, long pants, socks, shoes, and have chemical resistant gloves. Many of you have heard of barrier laminate gloves or buteo rubber, nitrile. So those are the types of things you're going to want to look at, like neoprene gloves, polyvinyl chloride or PVC, Vitin, or others listed in Category C on an EPA chemical resistance category selection chart. So obviously when you're working in a crawl space, you're actually going to be applying BoraCare in a confined space. So as we look at the label as it relates to that, you need to make sure you provide ventilation or an exhaust system or use of a NIOSH approved dust mist filtering respirator. This would be MSHA/NIOSH approval number prefix TC-21C. It needs a pre-filter approved for pesticide. This would be MSHA-NIOSH approval prefix TC23C or a canister approved for pesticides MSHA-NIOSH approval prefix TC14G or a NIOSH approved respirator with any NRP or HE pre-filters recommended. So there's some specific recommendations you need to know for these NIOSH respirators before you applicate with this product. And obviously, as far as providing ventilation or an exhaust system goes, it depends. I mean, there is good ventilation on some crawl spaces, but is it really enough? I would definitely go with the respirator. And of course, you're not really going to put an exhaust system in there. So again, the respirator is going to be your best bet. Let's look at the mixing instructions on a BoraCare label. Mixing instructions for BoraCare is a concentrate that must be diluted with clean water before use. The use of warm or hot water is not required, but if available, can aid the dilution process. An impeller type of mixer can be used with an electric drill to shorten mixing time. This is a really big deal. I can tell you if you've ever used BoraCare, it's a thick gelatin type of substance. I mean, if it's cold in the wintertime where you're at, it can be really, really tough to get this product to mix. You're going to spend a lot of time. So I just wanted to let you know, just like the label says, that warm or hot water is great. I'm sure most of you won't have something like that on site. So keep in mind, you're probably going to be using regular cool water or obviously even some cooler cold water if it's really cold out. So keep in mind you're going to need an impeller type of mixer to mix this stuff up. It's basically like a paint mixer you put on a drill. You don't want to try to stir this by hand. It's really, really hard to stir it up by hand and get it where it's not too thick to come out of your sprayer. Okay guys, I just wanted to show an example of a mixing paddle on a drill here. So it's pretty simple. It's got some fan flaps to it. But this is the best way to mix your BoraCare. Just get an attachment of the mixing flaps and put it on your drill. And probably you're going to want to do it for at least a couple of minutes. Again, you need to make sure that BoraCare really gets mixed up in the bucket before you pour it in your sprayer. I want to talk a little bit more on the label and talk about hand volume pumping systems. So they're going to talk about something a little different here. They're going to talk about mixing the product in the tank itself. I prefer not to do it that way. I actually like mixing it with a paint stirrer and a bucket like we talked about and then pouring it into the sprayer. But when you do it the way the label talks about, it's going to talk about adding all the dilution water to the tank. So obviously, first things first, add your water to the tank. Then you're going to start the recirculator. So you're going to get that water moving around, and then you're going to slowly add the boric air concentrate. Once again, this is not my favorite method, but since it's on the label, we're going to say that's definitely a way you can do it. You're going to want to mix it until it's uniform, obviously. You're going to be using either a 1-to-1, 2-to-1, or 3-to-1 ratio of the boric air, and you're going to make sure you use it within 24 hours of mixing. Now, it does say that 5-to-1 solutions will remain stable up to 30 days. I definitely wouldn't suggest leaving this product in a tank for 30 days. This product likes to crystallize. I found that out. Even when it talks about cleaning and or flushing the equipment in lines with water after each use, that's hugely important. There's no worse product to crystallize and gum up your equipment than boric air. If any of you have ever used it, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So my suggestion is mix exactly what you need to use it, and then make sure you run at least a gallon of water through your equipment to kind of knock that boric air out. Because once it crystallizes in your lines, it's very hard to fix your equipment up after that.
You have completed Part 2 of this course on wood-boring beetles. Please continue to Part 3.
Factors that affect fumigation of raw agricultural products. A variety of factors affect the use and success of fumigants. Some of the most important factors in stored product fumigation are pest characteristics, temperature of the commodity or area you plan to treat, moisture in the commodity or area to be fumigated and in the air surrounding or within it, air movement and diffusion within the area you fumigate, construction of the structure within which you treat an item, or the quality of the seal enclosing the area to be fumigated, applicator knowledge and skill. Pest characteristics, raw product fumigation. Several aspects of the pest biology can influence the effectiveness and timing of a fumigant treatment. These include the insect stage of growth. Pupa and eggs are the hardest to kill because they are not active. Adults and young larvae are most susceptible. The activity level of the insect. Active adults and larvae are easier to kill than are inactive or hibernating adults and larvae. This is because active insects have a higher metabolism, allowing them to process the pesticide faster. Therefore, whenever possible, wait until the insects are mature and active before fumigating. Let's stop and talk about this slide for just a moment. We first and foremost have to understand that identification is the most important thing when we're dealing with any insect. Once we identify our insect, we need to know what type of metamorphosis they go through. So in this instance, we're talking about insects that would go through complete metamorphosis. That would be an egg, larval, pupal, and adult stage. Now we know by reading this slide, the hardest time to get a fumigant to work on an insect is when they're in that egg and pupal stage because they're not going to be active. It's not just knowing their life cycle, it's understanding what time of year they're going to be the most active and have that highest metabolism. We need them to process the pesticide as quickly as possible. So the reality is we're trying to figure out, based on the identification, the life cycle, and the activity of the insect, what time of year is best to fumigate. Now I understand you're going to have clients and customers that want you to fumigate at different times of the year, but we really need to think about this. When is the insect going to be the most active? What is the best time to fumigate? And as we're going to talk about here in a little bit, this can even involve temperature. If it's 20 degrees out, is it really a good time to do a fumigation? Are most insects going to be at their most active period? Is the fumigant going to work as well? Are we going to need more gas? These are the things we're going to talk about, but I just wanted to make the point. You need to understand that metamorphosis of the insect and when they're going to be the most active, and this will help you plan your fumigations out. The feeding habits of the insect. Insects that develop outside grain kernels are usually more susceptible to fumigants than species that develop inside grain kernels. The size of the infestation. Heavy infestations are more difficult to control. Masses of insects generate large amounts of dust, damaged grain, webbing, and cast skins. These materials interfere with fumigant penetration and increase sorption. Some insects have resistance to fumigants. Resistance is the ability of an organism to tolerate a pesticide. There are obvious levels of resistance. For example, some insects may be sensitive, weakly resistant, or strongly resistant to a specific insecticide. Total resistance is immunity. Frequent fumigation at doses too low to kill all insects promotes problems with resistance. Although this information is true for most insects, application recommendations vary with the pest. Let's take another minute to break this slide down. So we need to talk a little bit about resistance, because resistance is one of the biggest issues we face in the pest management industry. You need to understand that this resistance, the ability of an organism to tolerate a pesticide, can be a major problem, especially when we do things like we talked about in this slide. If we're using fumigants at lower doses, lower than what the label requires, we're really giving these insects just a little dose of it, and they're building what's called a resistance because they're not getting enough to kill them. It's just like anything else. Every living creature will evolve over a period of time. Like when you get a vaccine, they're giving you a little bit of the flu virus, right? You get the vaccine, you get the flu vaccine, you're getting a little bit of the virus. Not enough to give you the full-blown flu, but what that does is that builds up your immune system so you're basically resistant to the actual virus itself. That's what we're facing here. If we don't follow the label, which I know all of you understand, the label's the law, you always have to follow the label, use fumigants at the correct doses prescribed by the label, and you won't run into this resistance issue. But when you don't follow the label or you use dosages too low, you can have this resistance issue, and I've seen instances where fumigations didn't work because the label wasn't followed and they used too little of the fumigant. Temperature. Temperature refers to the temperature of the commodity you plan to treat. Under the tarp or within the structure where treatment will occur, temperature affects both the dosage and exposure period needed for pest control. As a rule, the higher the temperature, the less fumigant you will need. This is because as temperature increases, insect metabolism increases. As metabolism increases, insects breathe faster, absorbing more fumigant. Less fumigant is needed to kill the pest. As the temperature drops, the reverse is true. Insect breathing slows. You may need to add fumigant to get the same level of control. Below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, fumigants may not be effective at all. Higher temperature also increases the volatility of fumigants. Volatility refers to how readily a substance turns into a gas or vaporizes. The higher the volatility, the faster a fumigant disperses and penetrates. Sorption by the material being treated decreases and less fumigant is needed. Finally, temperature can cause a fumigant to stratify. Stratification occurs when air and fumigant form layers and do not mix. In general, if the temperature of a fumigant is significantly lower than air, stratification becomes more severe. For best results, fumigate when temperatures are above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Moisture. As the moisture content of a commodity increases, sorption increases. This makes it more difficult for a fumigant to penetrate a commodity. Therefore, products with high moisture contents require higher doses of fumigant. High moisture contents also increase the potential that residues will exceed legal limits due to the increased sorption and slow desorption. On the other hand, some dry fumigant formulations, such as phosphine tablets and pellets, need humidity to generate gas. These are called moisture-activated fumigants. If the air is too dry or moisture content of the commodity is too low, these fumigants will stay in solid form. Air movement. To be effective, a fumigant gas must diffuse, spread, even with air movement. To be effective, a fumigant gas must diffuse, spread evenly and quickly throughout the commodity or space that you are treating. They must enter small crevices, cracks, or spaces so that a lethal concentration contacts every pest. Even distribution is called an equilibrium. The ability of a fumigant to reach equilibrium depends on several things. In general, gases diffuse more quickly at higher temperatures and lower air pressures. Fumigants also spread faster when their initial concentration is high and the penetration distance is short. Some fumigants require air circulation to diffuse quickly. Without air circulation, the air and fumigant may form layers and fail to mix, a condition called stratification. Fans, ducts, and blowers are often necessary. Select equipment that fits the job. Fans are usually sufficient to stir the air in open areas. Confined areas with tightly packed commodities may require blowers or ducts to move the fumigant from one place to another. However, once the fumigant reaches equilibrium, the problem of stratification decreases. Sorption. When a fumigant gas contacts materials, gas molecules undergo the process of sorption. There are two types of sorption: adsorption and absorption. Adsorption occurs when the fumigant molecules stick to the surface of a treated material. Absorption occurs when the molecules penetrate into the material. Both types of sorption reduce the effectiveness of fumigants by removing molecules from the air. These bits of fumigant are no longer able to move freely and kill the target pest. Sorption also slows aeration, the process by which fumigant is released after treatment. Some fumigants are more subject to sorption than others are. Read the label information for sorption information about each product you consider. Commodities and the structures that house them also vary in their sorptive capacity. Loads of grain with many small pieces have a lot of surface area and are more sorptive. Inert surfaces, such as metal, are less sorptive. Knowing how sorptive certain chemicals and commodities are is critical. This information will help you determine how much fumigant to use, how long to contain the fumigant, and how long to aerate the treatment area or product. When sorption levels are high, you will need to use more fumigant. You will also need to increase the treatment time because diffusion is slower. When treatment is complete, aeration periods must be long enough to allow the fumigant to slowly desorb from the commodity. If aeration is too short, traces of fumigant may remain sorbed to the product. This can cause toxic residues, off flavors, or odors in the treated material. As a rule, sorption is greater at cold temperatures. For example, if the temperature inside a warehouse is cooled during fumigation, the commodities will absorb the fumigant at a higher rate. You will need to use more fumigant. The same is true for aeration. Aeration normally takes longer when temperatures are low or when products are cold. Adsorption is usually greater with fumigants of high molecular weights and low vapor pressures. Construction of the structure. Fumigant label information lists a range of doses from which to choose. Each dosage fits a specific situation. The most important factor in selecting a dosage is the tightness of the structure. The ability of a building to hold a fumigant directly affects the amount of gas needed to sustain a lethal concentration throughout. Higher doses are needed for structures that are of loose construction. For example, warehouses tend to have gaps around windows, doors, and wall joints. Lower doses may be adequate for tightly constructed structures such as boxcars and fumigation chambers. For loosely built structures, it is often better to seal the area than to increase the amount of fumigant you use. Seal. A tight seal around a structure or commodity ensures effective fumigation and the safety of those nearby. You can seal a structure or commodity in one of three ways. 1. Tape and seal all potential openings within a structure with plastic and fumigation tape. 2. Place a gas-tight tarp over the item or structure. 3. Use a fumigation chamber. The quality of the seal is important. It can affect the amount of fumigant needed. The tighter the seal, the less gas that will escape, and the less fumigant that will be needed. The length of time necessary to kill a target pest, the tighter the seal, the more constant the fumigant concentration, and the less time needed to achieve control. A fumigation chamber is an example of a tight seal. Little gas escapes from a well-constructed chamber. On the other hand, placing a gas-tight tarp over commodities or structures can provide a poor to excellent seal depending on the condition of the tarp, the tightness of the seams, the type of ground seal. Structures in sandy soils or with dirt crawl spaces may lose gas through the soil. Commodities sitting on concrete floors may lose gas through the concrete. To prevent these problems, always tarp the top and bottom of structures and items on porous bases. Some structures may be too large to tarp, such as warehouses or large grain bins. In these situations, a tape and seal job may be required. Always seal doors, windows, and vents. This will prevent heavy loss through large gaps. In grain bins, you should also seal unloading augers, roof exhaust vents and eave gaps, openings where the roof meets the sidewalks. Although tape and seal fumigation can prevent many leaks, the fumigant can penetrate untarped walls, even when the walls are made with solid materials like brick and concrete. You will usually need more fumigant to replace what is lost through untarped walls. Also consider the condition of the structure and the type of construction. A wooden structure, even when sealed, will not retain fumigants as well as one of brick, concrete, or steel. This is because wood is more porous than other materials. For example, round steel bins retain fumigant better than flat grain storage bins, which are usually made of wood. In addition, wooden structures are often not built as tightly as structures made with other materials. For these reasons, it is often necessary to tarp wooden structures during fumigation. Applicator knowledge and skill, raw product fumigation. In the end, you, the applicator, are the most important variable in raw product fumigation. Your education and training will directly affect the success and safety of your operation. Know and understand the properties of every product you plan to use. Consider how different factors will affect treatment. Understand the site, its limitations, and its strengths. Choose your dosage and application methods accordingly.
You have completed the program. Please proceed to the quiz.